Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 10 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Monday night, July the 4th. No, is it July the 4th or I'm not sure what day it is. Anyway, I've been off for a week or so forgive me. And I haven't been paying much attention to the calendar. So I'm glad to be here. This is an important show here tonight. I think it's important, and the reason it's important is because I want to bring up a subject that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's public advocacy, and that's all the people out here who are brave enough and have the balls enough to stand up and speak out against what they see is wrong, and that a whole lot of people will agree with is wrong, and yet they're shut down, they're silenced, they're made to be the bad guys, right? When actually what they're doing is trying to protect people and trying to protect children. And I want to talk about Darren Hinch, and he's out of Australia, and I did pop his website into the chat room, so if anybody wants to take a look at that, his information is in the chat room. And I don't know a whole lot about Darren Hinch. I just know a little bit from people that I've come in contact. Some of my good friends in Australia, in the land down under, have been throwing some good information my way about what's happening down there as far as the child protection laws go, and what's happening within the system, and with children in Australia, because I'm very much interested in this issue, because I'm interested in child rights worldwide, right, not just North America. And so, these are some good advocates down here in Australia who are doing some great work, and many times have to go undercover, really, and hide because of what they're doing, which is speaking out against the system and speaking out against what is wrong, And these are people that are standing up for human rights, and this has always been an issue. There will always be a certain group of people that are willing to stand up and really do some real work as far as promoting human rights, and not just passively talking about it like I am. And these people end up in trouble, and many times just for opening their mouth. It's not for serious crimes like these other perpetrators have committed against children or against people. They're just simply spreading. They're just simply telling the truth, not spreading the truth, but just telling the truth. And society. My interest in this whole situation here is that society is always trying to shut down the truth. There'll always be a certain sector of society that wants the truth hidden, that wants the truth shut down, right, silenced. And this has everything to do with child abuse. It has everything to do with child abuse prevention. It has everything to do with human rights abuses and human rights abuse prevention. And this is what I'm really all about. And so this particular topic is really, it just bothers me that this particular situation happened to this man that I don't know a whole lot about. Like I've just seen a few things on him and actually listened to a few of his shows on the radio. And I don't know, I'm not an expert on Darren Hinch. But the thing is he's been brought to court on some charges, and I'm just going to read from his website what he says here. This is his writing. He wrote on his website. He's sick. He's got a real serious issue. He's got to have a liver transplant or he will die. And so he's very ill. And so right now he's not in jail. He's actually just kind of been sentenced to stay home, and he's in trouble with the law. And why? Because he opened his mouth. He spoke out against what he thought was wrong. He stood up he's standing up for child rights, the protection of children, and so he's being shut down. And he's been kind of, I've noticed over the last year anyway, continually kind of being shut down because of he's speaking out against the system. And anytime you mess with the system, they're going to shut you down. And it's unfortunate because what it is all about freedom of speech. The freedom to speak out against what we see out there that we don't think is right, and the ability, the freedoms to be able to say what we want to say, and especially if we're not slandering people. And I suppose in his situation, he did do something that was against the law, but they said as far as I know, he didn't expose any names. He made a few mentions about a few things that got him in hot water, and so. This is horrible, and I just want to draw attention to this because this is exactly what's happening with every single person out here who speaks out against child abuse, really. There will always be somebody who wants to shut us down. Me as a survivor of child abuse, right, everybody who listens to my show is one child abuse survivor to another knows my story, and if you've read my book, A Life of Death and Redemption, I mean, I didn't have anybody telling me to be silent as an adult, right? But I was silenced as a child, and so I grew up in this mess and, was told that I'd be killed if I told anybody what was happening within my home. And, you develop this attitude that, okay, nobody cares about me anyway. I could just disappear off the face of the earth. It's really not going to matter. And, my voice doesn't count. So I grew up believing that. And then as an adult realized that that's so incredibly wrong. And I've always been interested in human rights and the pursuit of truth and the pursuit of what is right. And so that's my mission, you know what I mean? And that's why, working to fight to stop child abuse is perfectly right up my alley, because it's to say, look, it's wrong. We need to speak out against this, and we need to be able to be free to speak out against this, especially to bring out education and awareness and not go on some sort of vigilante hunt. And so I know that what they're talking about here is very true. Even Aaron Hinch says, he abhors vigilantes, and that's quoting right from his website. He doesn't like this whole vigilante justice stuff. Vigilante, take it into our own hands and go out there and cause a lot of people a lot of problems. That's not what this is about. But we should be able to freely speak about things that are wrong. And so, he did something that was obviously against the law, so he's in trouble now. But I really wanted to raise awareness about this issue, to the fact that many times journalists, especially journalists who are really seeking the truth on things, end up in a lot of trouble. Journalists, radio broadcasters, people, radio personalities, people who are speaking out against the system or against a certain group or against something that they see as wrong, quite often are shut down. And it's all exactly the same thing as somebody who shuts down a survivor of abuse and says you have no right to tell, or an abuser telling a child, if you tell, I will kill you. It's this whole silent thing. Let's keep this silence. Let's keep this corruption and this illegal activity. Let's keep it under wraps. No one's going to know about it. This is whole hiding behind closed doors things, pulling the shades down, from hiding it under the carpet. Any number of little, of analogies or whatever you want to call them. Anything to say, yeah, this is exactly what this is. Silencing somebody whose voice is very powerful. And so, it's unfortunate because what he's trying to do is protect children, right? So I'm all, thinking this is really a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like, we need to be able to protect children. And, there's a whole bunch of groups on Facebook, which I'm not going to mention names. If you search them out, you can find them. Groups who name and shame groups. People are naming pedophiles. Pedophiles that are, it's been made, somewhat public knowledge so that they can obviously somebody's gotten a hold of the information, right? And then post it, somewhere where people can see this so that they can know that a pedophile is living in their neighborhoods. Now, thank God we have, in North America, we have laws in place to say, people have to be on a list if their names are, if they're convicted of a sexual crime against a child, especially, or a sexual assault of any type. I think they have to go on these found guilty. That's found guilty and convicted, right? They go on the sex offender registry lists, right? And you can type into your computer, bring up these sex offender registry lists, and find out how many pedophiles live within a few miles of your home. Or a few kilometers of your home, and you can find out if there's pedophiles right by your child's school. You can find out if there's pedophiles living, or people who have been convicted of a sexual offense that's been convicted and they're they've been found guilty, that will be on that list. And you can find out if they're living near your child's bus stop, just anything like this. And in North America, that's just standard now. It's just something that we all have the ability to get a hold of this information if we really choose to use it to protect our children. Now in Australia they don't have that, and so here's what's going on. You know what I mean? They're allowed, pedophiles are allowed to, under the law in Australia, to remain secret. Nobody knows who they are. They could be living right next door to you. They could befriend you. You could totally not know that this person was convicted of a sexual crime against a child, and then they could babysit for the day, and you wouldn't even know that this pedophile was living right next to you, and that the person that is claiming to be this good person, whether it's a woman or a man, gets a hold of your child and sexually abuses your child because you were not told that, you were not made aware or didn't even have access to information that this person was a sexual offender. and should have been on the sexual offender registry list. In North America, they would have been. It's real sad. So what, this is, who's protecting children? You know what I mean? Why are we protecting the perpetrators of the crimes? Now, I'm not, like I'm saying, I'm all like Darren Hinch and a whole bunch of other people. I'm not out here to promote violence, because that's what I'm standing up against, is violence. So I'm not one of these people that says, oh, we got to lynch all the people that are out here doing all these horrible things. We have to, there's a whole group of people that love to be violent, and they like to think that we should just round up all the people that are harming children, including parents and anybody else, and kill them or whatever, or send them off to some island or whatever. That's not the answer. The issue, they deserve to have their human rights intact too. Now, that's my opinion, and I have to voice that, because two wrongs don't make a right. So, for instance, for me to think that my parents should have been abused the same way they abused me doesn't make it right. It will never take away the fact that they abused me, and it's not going to help anything. So what's the purpose of that? They're human beings. I have to have some type of compassion for them. It's the same with, and my sibling, it's the same with these pedophiles out here and these other people who are abusing children. There has to be some change, but yet they have human rights too. But I also, on that note, have to say that I totally disagree with keeping those pedophiles and those people in those different countries that do not allow them to go on the registry lists and have to keep it all under wraps, and nobody's allowed to know who they are, so that they can go ahead and reoffend without anybody knowing. That's just lovely. That these people, sadly enough, like they have human rights, and they should be treated with every dignity and respect that a human has. But they also did the crime. They need to do the time, just like everybody else. You do the crime, you do the time, and then if you're a menace and a sheer and a real threat to children or anyone else, that you should have a name put on a sex offender registry list, because this just bothers me that there's countries out here. Obviously, there's lots of countries that don't have these sex offender registry lists. I mean, North America's pretty good for that, for getting that going. But that the rest of the world isn't coming up and saying, that's a really great idea, because these people reoffend and reoffend and reoffend. Every one of them, no. Some of them, yes. Do you want to take a chance on which one? Do you want to take a chance that the one that's going to reoffend lives right next to you and you would never even know it? Could be that the one who's not going to reoffend lives right next to you. That's great. You'd never even know it then. But how do you know? Where's the protection for the children? It's just too many variables. It's like, where's the child's protection? See, these people, the only reason why they're labeled, what they are, whether somebody's a murderer, whether somebody's an abuser, whether somebody's a wife beater, whether somebody's a pedophile, whether somebody's a person who violently sexually assaults somebody, they have labels, and that's because they've done the crime, been found guilty, and that's what they carry with them. You know what I mean? So they've done the crime. Where's the protection for the public? This is what's always bothered me about this kind of stuff, and that's why I'm not all into this vigilante stuff. This bad feelings. I mean, these people have screwed up. They made some seriously wrong choices. Do they have? Should they be afforded human rights and treated with dignity and some type of respect, so that their very basic human rights are met? I mean, no, they deserve to have every thing that everybody else has, except for they need to do the time, and they need to do the time that fits the crime. And the people would say, okay, what about the death penalty? I mean, how do I feel about that? I mean, I think it's horrible, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's sad. And lots of people say, okay, no, we'll just put them all on death row and we'll just kill them all. I don't believe that a life brings back a life, and I don't think there's any way to justify that. But, there's this whole issue with Darren Hinch. I mean, who is this guy, and why is he so powerful, and why are they trying to shut him down? Like, he says here, no illusions. I'm just reading right from his page. He says, I am under no illusions. If it hadn't been for my serious medical condition, I would be in jail right now instead of writing this. And Magistrate Charles Rosenzweig made no bones about that when I appeared before him today after being convicted on 4 charges of breaching suppression orders involving serial sex offenders. He says, that's understandable. I have previous convictions for contempt of court and have already served one term in jail for revealing the prior convictions of a molesting Catholic priest. Instead of immediate jail, it would seem I am about to be sentenced to a term of home detention. The magistrate did not indicate how long that would be, but he made it obvious that he would also attach some added restrictions. The final decision has been postponed until next month because my eligibility is still being assessed by the Department of Justice. I have already spent more than 4 hours answering questions at 2 sessions, and a home inspection will be conducted next week. I received a very fair hearing in court today where I represented myself, and I don't think I had a fool for a client. On the medical issue, I had evidence from one of my consulting physicians, Dr. Adam Testro, and an affidavit from Professor Bob Jones affirming that my need for a liver transplant is urgent, that without one I will die or become inoperable within 3 months, and that I must be in phone contact with my doctor 24/7 and within 45 minutes of the Austin hospital at all times. I disputed evidence from Corrections Victoria that they could have me transferred from Port Phillip Prison in Laverton to the Austin in 45 minutes. I had estimates from our 3AW traffic reporter, Carolyn Ferguson, that in peak hour the trip will take around 1 hour 35 minutes if you're lucky enough to get a very good run with no roadworks, accidents, etc. And a Port Phillip prison officer told me last week that she had finished her overnight shift at 7:45 a.m., and it took her 2.5 hours to get to Mentone. In court, I managed to raise issues about the public exposure of sex offenders overseas in the United States. President Clinton signed a federal Megan's Law bill in 1996. And in England and Wales, as of April this year, 43 police forces, including Metropolitan Police, now accept Sarah's Law and make sex offenders' names and records available to parents who believe their child may be at risk. I believe a similar law will be enforced in this country in the next few years. I may not be here to see it, but it will happen. He says, I do not believe this encourages vigilantes, and I abhor vigilantes. In April this year, the BBC said Sarah's Law, which first started in 2008, had not led to vigilante attacks. I represented myself today because it was the first time in the 3 years since this saga started that I have spoken on my own behalf. I wanted to explain to the court that despite my record of offenses, I am not a cowboy, thumbing my nose at the courts, and actually consider myself a law-abiding citizen. I did tell the court, the law as it stands is the law, and I have broken it, and for that I must be punished. I have said, do the crime, do the time, and I have publicly argued against suspended sentences as being worthless. What happens next is up to the magistrate. And so he says, footnote, as I left court today, I was handed a letter by a victim of sexual assault who has loyally turned up at court hearing after court hearing to support me. She and her partner travel long distances to do that. She wrote in part, we will never give in or up in this fight. Like yourself, Darren, we too will fight till the end, especially when it comes to protecting the children and the vulnerable. So that's awesome. This was written by Darren Hinch, and this is from his website. That's from http://hinch.net. And you can check it out. I just think that, this is just one more case where somebody is being silenced because they were trying to protect the citizens and trying to protect people. And, it's not like he's a vigilante. This guy's an educated, guy who's out here upholding the law, but also trying to protect the citizens. And I think, it's just one more place where people, one more person that is getting shut down because he's just coming up against the system, and people don't like it and they find him uncomfortable. They did that to Jesus, they put him on the cross. But the thing is to just do it to anybody who speaks out. And I just think it's wrong, and I think that we all have to stand up for our human rights. And if we don't, we will lose them. And you can guarantee that. See, people have died. People, I don't know, too many people don't probably sit around and think about this stuff, but I do. And I think about all the men and women who have lost their lives over the years, including children and young people, in this mess to try to secure human rights. And people say, but really, do we really still have human rights? Well, we have more than we ever did, and we have more than we have had for a long time. And that's because these people were willing to stand up for what they believed in, which meant a lot of them had to die. Many of them died for it. And, to try to secure human rights for people around the world, people think it's a real joke and that the world really isn't interested in that. But actually, that's not true. There is a part of it where, the servicemen and women today who are out here fighting are actually fighting, for whatever reasons the countries are fighting for. In their hearts, they're fighting for the betterment of the world, you know what I mean? So I'm thankful. I wanted to be in the service, so there you go. But I'm just thankful for everybody who's ever stood up for anything that was right, children who are being abused, there's no protection for them. right? Obviously, the people in their lives that were supposed to stand up for them aren't standing up for them. So, whoever's hurting that child, there should have been somebody there to step in, and so many times there's not. Then you get the system, the law, you get the child protective services and whatnot. Are they standing up for these children? I mean, mostly no. The system has failed child after child, and they do still save some lives, so we can't give up on it. But the thing is that we really need to speak out and speak up against what is wrong, and we have to be able to do that without going on a vigilante hunt and naming names. And I there's a lot of groups on Facebook and stuff, naming names and shaming, name and shame or whatever. And I mean, if that's the way they want to do it, that whatever, and it's because within their own countries they don't have the right. These people do not have to go on sex offender registry lists. See, in North America, it's real easy for us to say, okay, we need to be doing that because we have lists of people that are supposed to be on there, and many times some of them slip through, but most of them are still are actually on there, and it's good because if a person really wants to know, they can find out just how many sexual predators who have been found guilty and convicted of a crime live within the radius of, however many miles of their home. And for their own protection, for their children's protection, I think it's a great idea. And, why isn't it this way in these other countries? For instance, Australia and the UK. These are countries that like to think that they're, doing quite well and up in the world, and well, they are. You know what I mean? But the thing is, everybody wants to run down the States, but the States does have some really good stuff, and so does Canada. And, why not take a little bit of a lead from that and say, you know what, this is what the people want. Nobody wants to go on a vigilante hunt. And for those people that do, shame on them, because they are then becoming the abusers. See, that's why abusing people just because they abuse somebody is wrong. It makes two wrongs. You can't. I don't condone abuse of any kind, which means, military abuse against somebody, police officer abuse. I'm totally pro-law. I'm 100% all the way pro-law. So see, it doesn't do any good to argue with me about that. But the thing is that we know that there's abuses within the system. I'm all for families too, but I know some families are really horrible. You know what I mean? See, I'm just looking at the truth and the reality of the whole thing. Everything has got some corruption in it. Everything has got some people that have ulterior motives and are really quite sick and twisted and do these horrible things because they're people and they make mistakes and they do the wrong things. And I think that, as a society, we have to really find out what are the issues and address them without going all vigilante and all, crazy about it, And I think it's just going to take some real education and people, getting the word and then spreading the word, for parents. I mean, for instance, to me, it just makes sense that parents, should. I know myself only because of what's going on in the world. If I had children, I'd want to know how to protect them, and I would want to know all the different ways that I could protect my child from a child sexual predator. And, many people just don't care. And even if it's not because they don't care, they don't think about it. Maybe they weren't sexually abused as a child, so they're not thinking this sort of thing happens. But then there's those of us out here that know that child sexual abuse happens because we were abused sexually as children. We know this stuff is happening. And so, it's really quite sad that there will be parents out there who will not educate themselves on how to protect their children. First of all, you shouldn't let your child go to the bus stop by themselves anyway. You can't these days, right? I mean, that's the problem. Could you ever back in the 50s? No. There were child sexual predators back in the 1950s. People weren't talking about it, and it was all under wraps and silenced, and nobody was allowed to say anything. But we know, because there's survivors out here who are getting up there at age who now, that survived that. There's been child sexual abuse forever. And the thing is it's never been a safe world. And it's just really, I don't know. It's people just in denial, thinking that this world is a safe place and it's a good place. It's not. It's an absolutely horrible mess. But there's some good people in it. And there's some good things in it. And there's some good times in it. But it doesn't mean that it's not a horrific mess. Take a look around at what's going on. And so if we're gonna be living with a blind eye and just walking around in some sort of state of denial, then we're setting our children up for a whole lot of trouble. It's just important, to learn the signs and symptoms of abuse, and learn, don't just leave your child with anybody. I know it's a hard situation. People have to work, and people have to go places and do things, but you have to think about that when you're having a child, and make sure that you have it set up so that you know who's around your child, and that check the references at the daycare. Check the people out who are at the daycare. Check your babysitter out. Don't just let anybody babysit your child. You want to know that you can trust that person, and that person's not going to sexually use your child. My God, but this is what's happening out here, people. This is the truth and the reality of it. There are so many child sexual predators out here, and they are not just these men running around in trench coats looking kind of suspicious. These are girls, women, men, everybody. There's older people, younger people, kids, There's all kinds of people out here doing all kinds of disgusting and lewd sexual things to children. And, the rest of the world's just walking around with these blinders on, these like rose-colored glasses or something. Oh, life's great, life's good. Well, not for these kids who are being sexually abused, I tell you that. Or abused in any way, since I fight against all child abuse. But the thing is Darren, he's just one more man who's fighting, to save children's lives, and for the protection of children, and for the protection of citizens, really. And, look what it's got him. So, it's like he's just one more person who's, spoke out and overstepped the boundaries, you know what I mean? But, I just think that people just need to realize that this is very, very serious. And child abuse has always been pushed under the carpet, and whether it's child abuse from a parent or whether it's child abuse from a stranger, child sexual abuse or child sexual assault by a pedophile or a stranger, whether it's somebody the child knows, whether it's a parent, it's always being hushed up and shoved under the carpet. Nobody wants to hear about it. And the abusers really don't want it out there because they don't want to be busted. They don't want to be known for what they've done. They want to be able to continue doing what they're doing, especially habitual child sexual predators. These people, this is what they do. It's a disease. It's an illness. That's what I believe, just from the materials that I've read on it. And, you've got to protect your children from this sort of thing because these people are everywhere. You know what I mean? If 1 in 3 to 4 girls and 1 in 6 to 7 boys is being sexually abused under the age of 18, which is the facts, that's the truth, that's North America. I think that's actually the United States, but I don't know what the stats are in Canada, but that's, as far as I know, that's the States. 1 in 3 to 4 girls, 1 in 6 to 7 boys. That's ridiculous when you think about that. How many child sexual predators there must be out there? Because on average, the child sexual predators that actually have been caught and found guilty and actually fessed up to how many people they have, how many children they have molested or assaulted or whatever they've done to these children, it's the average, I think it was 127 each. 127 children they got a hold of. You don't want one of your children to end up a victim of a child sexual predator. You don't want your child to be a victim of a child sexual assault. You don't want your child to be having to deal with these issues or be killed. So many of them are. So many children end up, I know because of what I'm doing, a lot of the people out here who have lost a child to due to them going missing children, quote unquote. They're not missing. They're somewhere. And they're being used, and they're being used until they're dead, and then they just bury them or whatever they do. Absolutely horrific. You do not want your child to end up like that. And so I'm mainly speaking on behalf of children here, but everybody's got to watch out for these people, and they're everywhere. So we do have to speak out. We do have to speak up. Good on you, Darren Hench. And you know what? I hope that they see that they think about the fact that, and at least give him the honor of the honor that he deserves, because he's out here trying to protect people, and he's back in the law, but he's also out here trying to protect people, and so he made a mistake, But he's not these child sexual predators out here abusing children. We got to think about that. Who's the real perpetrators of these crimes, and who's the real victims? You know what I mean? Keep that in mind, and remember to advocate where you can. Get involved, use your voice, and do what you can to make a difference for these children in this world today. You know what I mean? They need us. They need every single one of us. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Good night.